He's in. Here we go.
Okay.
Okay, and now here we go. People are starting to file in. Awesome. Welcome, everybody. Good morning. We'll let people pile in for a bit, and then I'll kick it off. Awesome. Great. Well, for the sake of time, I'm just going to begin. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Callie Chadwell. I am the event manager at WTIA. This is our first business skills webinar series in partnership with Comcast. If you have any issues during the webinar today, please message me via the chat box down below. You should see a chat icon at the bottom of your screen. Once again, my name is Callie, so you can message me with any sort of technical issues, questions you might have during the day. And then for any questions you have in general for the content we're sharing, you can include those in the Q&A box down below, also at the bottom of your screen. And we have some time at the end of the presentation to address those. And any we don't get to, we'll try and answer them after and send you guys out an email. So before we get into all of the nitty gritty, I'd like to introduce our partner, who is Betsy Kippenhand. She's Vice President of Human Resources for Comcast Washington, and she has a few words on the sponsorship.
Great. Thank you so much, Kaylee, and thank you so much to WTIA for putting this webinar on today, and for allowing me to speak and address the important topic of inclusive accessibility tools for our remote workforce. WTIA plays a unifying role in our state's technology industry, and we are happy to serve the organization and everyone at this time. These are really challenging times for everyone in the state, and Comcast is committed to Washington, where we have over 4,000 employees and serve more than 1.6 million residential and business customers throughout our state. That work also includes maintaining the state's largest residential internet network, and we are so proud to provide technology that is supporting remote work for employees and online learning for students for the foreseeable future. As an HR leader, the topic really resonates with me. Although remote work is not new to the tech industry, we have never seen many people working at home before. This brings with it a new set of challenges for enabling an entire workforce to be successful from home. This current environment also brings a new set of challenges for companies to address empowering their workers who have particular accessibility needs. The more we can support through technology enablement, the better. It enables our workers to grow their skill sets and operate more effectively, and it helps make the Washington state technology industry even stronger than ever. Using technology to support the accessibility community and help its members become meaningful contributors to the workforce is also something we at Comcast are particularly passionate about. We have a history here locally and nationwide in supporting these efforts, from organizations like Special Olympics Washington to Goodwill Industries in Seattle and Spokane. We have partnered to create programs in Washington state that utilize technology to enable individuals of all needs to have roles in today's workforce. Our company seeks to make accessibility possible for all aspects of our technology, and we are committed to making our products and services and experience accessible to the widest possible audience to open new doors to independence for people with disabilities. If you are a current customer, you may have our popular voice remote at home. What you may not know is that the remote by Tom Wildowski, our VP of Accessibility, who is also legally blind. Over the last several years, this remote has become one of the most popular, important parts of our evolving technology. Today, our voice remote can process 1 billion different voice commands, and Comcast even received an Emmy Award for Technology and Engineering for this creation, thanks to Tom. Tom is a great example of what employees and a company can achieve if they provide an individual with accessibility needs with the tools and resources they need to be successful today. So thank you again to the WTIA for putting together a webinar on such an important topic. I'm so excited to be here to learn more from Nin Johnson, an expert in this field. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Betsy. And now I'm gonna turn it over to Nin to get into the content and everything.
Okay. Kelly, can you tell me if you can hear me? Yeah, you can hear me? Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you all for coming to the webinar today. My name is Nin Johnson. My first name is easier to pronounce without the H. First of all, I want to acknowledge that I have the privilege of currently having an able body. While this webinar is designing online meetings for all, not just those with accessibility needs, I am a lifelong learner who is passionate about making the workplace more accessible to people with all abilities. I'm open to receive your feedback after this webinar to make this type of content more relevant, respectful, and helpful. Before I dive into the presentation, I have made these slides accessible by using the check accessibility feature on Microsoft PowerPoint. I am using closed caption, which is a feature that you can see here at the bottom of the screen, which is transcribing my speech. Although it is not perfect, so keep that in mind. But it's helpful for people who are visual learners and those who cannot hear me as we speak. And they can also benefit from anybody who can benefit from reading the text. The material presented here are for those who are not familiar with accessibility features and tools that are available. We know you're here because you want to make your work more inclusive for your coworkers of all abilities. I'm so sorry, everyone. I'm supposed to show this slide. I think it was probably wasn't play. It was partly, yes. I would continue to skip that slide, and this is about me. So we have an agenda here. Today we will cover inclusive designs for online meetings, conditions that are needed for online meetings, and also different access needs for online meetings. So the last session we will have will be a Q&A. We will cover a lot of the ground in the next 45 minutes, and this is still just a small percentage of what could be covered. We designed this webinar to address simple ways to make online meetings more inclusive. Today's webinar is an overview, and next Wednesday webinar will be a workshop where I can explain more in depth and demonstrate some tools with you. So in today's presentation, we will be using the common tools such as G Suite, also known as Google Docs and Slides to a lot of people, and also Office 365 and Zoom. These are the tools that most workplaces are using as of May 2020. We won't be covering Microsoft Teams, Skype, or WebEx, etc. So designing inclusive meetings, especially inclusive online meetings. For the purpose of this webinar, I define meeting as a planned discussion with an agenda for a minimum of 2 participants, where one is responsible for setting the agenda. We're talking about online meetings, and I want to make sure that not about an in-person one. This could include 2-person meetings and 1,000-person meetings, because Zoom can, some of the Zoom packages can do that. So we're not talking about informal meetings that don't require an agenda and a plan. So let's start with why we need to design meetings with inclusion in mind. If you're wondering why I keep looking down to the audience, I'm using the notes. This helps me a lot. So the questions to consider. To design meetings for all, a person who is designing the online meetings should consider these questions. What is an access need? It is something that a person needs to learn, to participate, and to communicate. We all have access needs. How do I define potential barriers to access? In preparing meetings, think about how you can identify barriers to others' ability to learn, participate, and communicate. So number 3, how do I design a meeting that will benefit as many people as possible? So not just benefits those with specified access needs, such as a person with low vision, while benefit benefiting everyone, even those who don't state they have those needs. For example, adding closed captioning, like here, what I'm doing right now, for the deaf and hard of hearing, they can also benefit people who temporarily lost their hearing. And also people who are not fluent in English, or people who are working from a home right now with lots of distraction and background noise. So this philosophy is the core to what is called universal design. 4, how do I incorporate inclusion at every step? How do I incorporate inclusion at every step? From designing to sending out pre-meeting communications to the meeting itself, and then follow up to the meeting. So I will go in depth in later slides. So here we have a checklist. We suggest doing this checklist like this for your telework teams. Telework team as in people who are now working from home. So survey check-in with meeting attendance for their access needs, like we did for this Zoom webinar. Craft a survey using Google Form. So you can do that with Google Form as well. Check your emails, digital documents for accessibility. We will cover briefly on how you can do that in this webinar. Also, send an agenda ahead of time so that people have time to read and digest. And of course, the last but not least, be sure to practice meeting access needs you can accommodate. There are many things you can do because resource constraints, and there are many things that you can easily start doing. This webinar is about helping you see all the things that you can easily do. So we have arrived to conditions needed for online meetings. Now with the COVID-19, a lot more people are working from home, and we now have more reason to talk about how to make online meeting accessible. There are 3 categories of requirements for working from home. I want you to keep that in mind. One is hardware, the other two is software, and internet connection and phone connection. I will not be able to do this broadcasting of a live webinar without those hardware and internet connection and the software that I'm using, which is Zoom. So required hardware. So make sure that you have a computer with a video camera or at least a smartphone or phone. If people don't have access to a computer or smartphone, you need to make special accommodations. So also check with people who are working from home right now, if they have a desk or a chair to be able to sit long hours working remotely while preventing telework-related injuries from prolonged sitting in uncomfortable sitting arrangements. Those with physical disability who are teleworking may be using specialized hardware such as keyboard, specialized mouse and devices. So check with the person who uses specialized hardware to see if your online meeting is compatible with their hardware. Also try different forms of communication methods other than video conferencing if need be, such as a regular phone call. We will briefly describe these options in this webinar. Here are the list of apps or software options you may need for your online meetings and telework in general. Zoom is one of them, which is the most popular one these days. There are other notable apps like I presented here on the right side of the slides. We have Microsoft Teams. Google Meet is relatively new. It also comes with live captioning. I've tried it. It is not so bad. Cisco WebEx is another option you have in Skype, and of course Slack. Slack is more of a text messaging. That's most people use it for. These are the common apps that many people are using for telework. These are the features in each of those apps that can make your online meetings easier. We will talk about those features in upcoming slides. Okay, here we arrive to internet connection. You can design a great online meeting, but some participants might not be able to access it if they don't have a good internet connection. There are a variety of internet speed. I'm not going deep into that. For those people who can only call in, assign them a meeting advocate who can ensure they don't get forgotten during the meeting. So they're pretty much meeting buddies. This shouldn't be the meeting facilitator who will be too busy running the meeting. So it is good to have an advocate for your coworker. It's good to have buddies. Also provide call-in numbers if you are sending out Zoom invites so that people have a second option in addition to clicking on the link to Zoom, joining like video conferencing. So also keep in mind that some user cannot have the video turned on due to limited bandwidth and also speed, internet speed. When I look online, and I did a little research on the internet, most video conferencing apps require at least 5 to 40 megabit per second of internet speed. So keep those in mind when you are designing online meetings. So meeting access needs. And we will be covering, starting by presenting you a variety of access needs. Yes, there are many different types of access needs as shown here. We have visual, auditory, speech, language, and cognitive. The list shown here is not exhaustive, meaning that they are not comprehensive, but it covers most common needs. I got this list from reading materials on many disability advocacy websites and also disability support sites. Most of them are nonprofits. You are seeing here as each category as if a person can only have one of these needs at a time. Keep in mind that an individual can have more than one type of access needs. For example, a person who is hard of hearing can also have low vision or color blindness. Similarly, someone who is on the autism spectrum may or may not have other needs such as language, auditory, and so on. In short, we don't know what people need for the meeting to be accessible. What we can do is always ask these questions. What are your access needs? Are your access needs met? The key here is not to make assumptions about people's access needs. Visual needs, now we will explore visual needs. So who needs it? I wonder if anybody did a little poll earlier, but if you did, as listed on slides, people with no or low vision, people who have color blindness, meaning they will see some color differently than many people do. And also people who are farsighted and short-sighted. I am short-sighted, and also I have a little bit of astigmatism. So I rely on my glasses in order to be able to drive and to see things that are far away. So these are the type group of people who may need visual needs, and how can we be accessible in designing our online meetings? Let's go into that. The first thing I'd like to touch on is font size and font type. As shown on this slide, font type and size, you can predict how readable your digital documents and presentation. Some fonts are easier to read than others. Here's the Arial font and Times New Roman. You can see how different they are in size. First, we need to make the font size readable, meaning the font size should be at least 11 in size. Depending on the type of font you're using, some fonts still look small, require squinting at size 11. I'm using a 13-inch monitor screen right now. Sometimes when I read 11-point font for my school assignments, sometimes I really have to zoom in and squint a little bit. So keep that in mind about your font size. Don't make it too small. Ensure your meeting notes and emails and other digital documents are readable and do not require squinting at an actual size. That's what I just said. That meaning people do not have to zoom it in. So you got to make it convenient for the readers. As for presentation, use a larger font size, size 24 and above for body text, like shown here. So 24 is good for the most part for presentation, and 36 for the headings, like I'm doing here on this slide. So anything below that requires squinting. Keep that in mind. So how about zoom? I'm not talking about zooming in. I'm talking about magnification feature. So you may sometimes need to turn on the magnification glass option, especially for images and spreadsheets with small numbers or letters and other contents. You can find the magnifying option on Mac. It's called Zoom. on the little icon here, that is a little black circle. It says Zoom, and on the right side is a icon for Microsoft magnification option. I mean, not Microsoft. Let me correct that, for Windows user. So I will show you a little bit of demo what I mean by sometimes you have to use this particular feature. Okay. 1 second, please. All right, here in this video, can you see my Word document? This is my Microsoft Word document on my 13-inch monitor screen. That was a screen recording of it. So I just did a shortcut on my Mac and I hit shortcut for Zoom. And now I'll be able to see, I can see little things in the drop-down list. Normally I have to squint, like I would get close, really close to the screen to read it. So with this little Zoom option, knowing that in the meeting, if you're talking about how to use a new app at your job and sharing that with your coworkers, this is one thing you can do to help them see the contents in this application or software that you're presenting. All right, I'm going to stop that for now. I think that's, I think I made a point here. So after you click that option, it will pop out in the diagram. And it will pop up really big. 1 second. All right, then I would hit zoom out. It's pretty easy to do, just on the keyboard, shortcut. And there it is. All right, why color contrast matters? I want you to look at the slide right now, if you are able to see right now. Look at the picture that I'm presenting. It looks like some kind of something edible, some food. Looks like bread and some kind of vegetables on top. Can you tell me what the little roundish things? There are like 3 of those things in the picture. All right, are you ready? So on the right side, it shows how normal color vision, people with normal color vision see. There's tomatoes. But on the left side of the screen, the one with color blindness labels on them, they are exactly many people with color blindness see. So they look like tomatoes in those pictures look like olives. So keep that in mind when you're adding pictures, images in your slides. Make sure that you add in caption, you describe them, and the color in it, if they are relevant to the context. I will go deeper into how to add in alt text in part 2 of this webinar. Not today. So there's based on tomato on toast. So color contrast, another thing to keep in mind, color contrast matters because for the reason that I just presented, not everybody see the color the same way. So look at this, see how hard it is to read on the left side. I did the same mistake when I presented at my school at UW. So I used pastel color background with the light font color, such as what I'm using here, the white font. It was hard for people to read. I did not even realize that. To me, I thought it was pleasing to my eyes, but not for everyone. So be aware of these using pastel and colors that are like vibrating. They call it vibrating colors. They are like right here on the left corner of the screen, the green background. If you're seeing the color, the green background and the red font, it is hard to read because they almost like blending in. And so a trick is to check if the color is black and white and if you can see it on the right side here. So the right side in the box, I'm showing you are making the color contrast higher, and there are web tools that you can use to check in your color contrast ratio to ensure that it is readable. So that is color contrast. So now we get to color coding. Color coding is very useful too, except for those who cannot distinguish between different colors. For example, orange on this chart, it represents those who are prospective clients. Oh, okay, there we go. And yellow represent existing clients right here. If you're seeing my cursor, it is the table on the top left. And for those who are colorblind, they can't distinguish well between different colors. Orange and yellow don't mean anything. So if you don't code them, like in the what I'm showing here on the left side, at the table on the left side, people won't be able to tell what those colors mean. They can differentiate it. So one way to help people is to add in another column. Just say what your color coding is trying to say. So in addition to your color coding, you can keep your color coding, but you can add this, like what I'm doing here on the right side with prospective client, and Coca is existing client, blah, blah, blah. So that's something you can do that. Just one little step to make it accessible for people. And check accessibility feature is another useful tool that you can use to check and ensure accessible documents and presentation. That feature checks for any accessibility mistakes. I did check using that today. You can fix accessibility errors by, it's almost like spell check. If you use any kinds of digital document before, you use a spell check option. It is similar to that. So that feature is currently available in Microsoft 365, meaning Microsoft Word and Microsoft presentation, PowerPoints, and also available in Acrobat Pro DC. So the one on the left here in the accessibility icon here, that is that icon. For Microsoft Word, you will have to find it under the review menu in the ribbon over here, and then there is a thing called right next to translate or check accessibility. So what do I mean by check accessible, making accessible digital documents? So this is a checklist, and I mentioned it earlier. So this is how you can do it. So having a logical structure and reading order, and adding alternative text description for figures from form fields and links, and also navigational aids such as table of contents and page numbers, and also security that does not interfere with assistive technology, such as screen readers. So this particular piece right here is for screen readers. So screen reader only reads in linearly, as far as I know. So if you don't have the headings and all that contents, make them line up and flow linearly, it will sound disorienting and not disorganized to the people who rely on screen readers. Also make sure that your fonts can be extracted to text, meaning like when you sometimes copy and pasting from PDF files, they don't get copy and pasted very well. They will look like little boxes and the text are like spaced out so far. So that's what I mean by that. We can go into depth in the part 2 of this webinar. So here's a vision need checklist. So to recap here, these are the things that you can do. Readable font size, high color contrast in images and text, and use magnification or zoom on computers, and consider alternatives to color coding, which I just mentioned, and also check accessibility features for screen readers friendliness. And before pre and post meeting, do this, is adding alt text. So alt text is not so much for during the meeting, but it works during the meeting, but you have to do it pre and post for it to work. I will go into depth in the upcoming webinar, which is a part 2 of this. So auditory needs, who needs it? People who lost their hearing completely, deaf or hard of hearing, will have these access needs. One thing you can do is to cut or reduce background noise to help people who are hard of hearing or deaf. Hard of hearing, such as like any background noises, lawnmowers, music, and ambient sounds from the outside. Also, try speaking closer to the microphone like what I'm doing here. It definitely helps. Transcription services like Auto AI can pick your voice more accurately if you speak closer to your microphone or headset. So try to minimize typing on your laptop keyboard. Like sometimes people do that. And those things can interfere with some transcription services. Keep that in mind. And closed captioning. Closed captions are good for people who have auditory needs. They cannot hear the sound well. So you are seeing right here live closed caption. Although it is not perfect, it is helpful, a step towards helpful. So the first form is a live version. So this is a live version, what you are seeing right here on the screen at the bottom. There are also professional live services you can do for better accuracy. I'm using Google Slide transcription, auto transcription. And there are also other AI applications that you can use for live captioning, especially you can integrate into Zoom meetings. On recorded videos, you have to, Zoom can save the transcripts for you, but only after you end the meeting and recorded it and it went to cloud or whatever, and when you download it. And YouTube also comes with automatic closed caption. And there are also video editing software where you can add in transcripts, but more of a manually. So here what it looks like adding closed caption on PowerPoint. On the right side of the screen, you can see the transcripts. Not transcript, but the closed caption. And here how you can do adding closed captioning on Google Slides. On the left side here, it says meetings with more accessibility feature. As you can see in the bottom, that's the closed captioning. So another thing you can do is sign language interpreter. By law, you need to accommodate a person with hearing needs who is also an ASL user. Not everyone who has hearing needs are ASL user. Please keep that in mind when you're doing online meetings. So the one thing I really want to touch on is make sure everyone at your meeting, especially large meeting, anything more than two, people should speak your name when you speak so that ASL interpreters know who is speaking, and also speak slowly for interpreters and people with disabilities. Written communications too, this is what it looks like, the RTT, real-time text or text telephone. That is way before we have text messaging on our phones. These are the options such as text messaging on our smartphones and regular phones, and emails, and also chat applications such as Slack and WhatsApp. These are the alternative to auditory meetings with voice involved, voice-heavy meetings. So auditory needs checklist, we have cannot reduce your background noise, put closed caption. I will recommend if needed here, because it depends on who the participant at the meeting. Some people may find it distracting. So, but if you have meeting attendees who need closed captioning, you have to add it in. So keep that in mind. So sign language interpreters, that is legally required, and use written communication tool as alternative to voice-heavy meetings. So speech needs. Now we have a right to speech needs. Speech needs is for people who are nonverbal and people with difficulty speaking. This is sometimes due to physical disability that makes their speech hard to understand. And it could also be for those who, for whatever reason, prefer writing out what they want to say instead of speaking. So chat box is a form of another communication. So for this who are not verbal, and chat box can be an important mode of communication during the online meetings. If you want to make it accessible and inclusive, that's how you do it. I can give you an example of chat boxes here on the right side. I apologize for them being really so small, but the top little one is the one with the white background is a Zoom chat box and how that look like, and the bottom is a Skype chat box. So you can have that option available, and make sure you turn that on, because sometimes by default, some apps have the chat box option turned off, especially for Zoom. So also when people are typing, also make sure that, if you see someone's typing, or if you think someone is still typing, so check in with people if they want you to wait for you or while they're processing their thoughts and typing in. And if they do not want you to wait for you, just go ahead and proceed with your whatever that you have to say in the meeting. So here's a speech needs checklist. So turn on chat box, learn our personal preference of the person who is using specialized hardware, and also assign someone to monitor the chat box so that things are popping out in the chat box and no one is checking, and that will not work. So make sure you have someone dedicated to checking that during your meeting. And language needs. Although this specific needs is not a disability related, for the meetings to be accessible and inclusive, it is also an access needs worth mentioning. Who needs this? English as a second language, ESL, or learners, or English language learners, also in acronym is ELL. And this is an access need commonly needed by English as second language learners and English language learners, and people who do not speak English well will also have these language needs. Please note that the English language fluency is not always at the same level across ESL and ELL speakers. Some may be somewhat fluent and others will be fluent like a native speaker. So always check with the person. Closed caption. So I'm here showing again closed caption is helpful for those who are not fluent English need, because when you make one thing accessible, it can also become accessible to other areas, such as people, you know, when we turn on closed caption, for example, for auditory needs, people with auditory needs, it can also benefit for people who needs be able to see the closed caption to understand what is going on. So it is part of the universal design. So these are the transcription services that are available. Zoom has it, but only after recorded and order and other transcription. Oh, here's the transcription, which is, it will print out a whole text. Not print out, but it will, you can generate a document in a PDF or Word or text after the meeting if you have this option on. So you got to have these apps in order for that to work. Google Slides and Microsoft PowerPoint do not do that. We will cover that in the part 2 of these webinars. And transcripts, this is how it looks like. So on the left bottom corner is the transcript that Zoom allows you to have. So after the recorded meeting, it goes to cloud recording, and this is how you can see on the right side. I apologize that it's so small, and that is the option. And on the right side is the auto AI transcript, and that is how it look like. So speak plain English. The best thing to do is that's the best thing to do to communicate with many people who are not fluent in English. Avoid idioms, avoid long sentences, especially those ones that are complex. I hope I am not doing that unintentionally today during this webinar. Avoid jargons unless it is work related and people at your work are already familiar with those jargons. Then use it. And use phrasal verbs sparingly. Verbs such as phrasal verbs such as break through, look after, grow apart, etc. And these can be overwhelming for not so fluent English speakers. If you use cultural references from your movies, books, sports, and these are part of cultures, and you got to explain what those means in your speech. Use most common English words to communicate. I did a little research online, and there are 1,000 most used English that you can use to communicate effectively. If you're unsure that your coworker needs, check with them. Please do not approach people with a feeling of superiority, because people who do not speak English fluently do not equate to lower skills or lower abilities on everything else. They are likely fluent in languages other than English. So here's a language needs checklist. I mentioned earlier that designing meeting to meet specific access need can actually help other people. Speaking in plain English can help even native English speakers who aren't familiar with jargon. And getting this discussion question beforehand can help those who need more time to process, and closed captioning can help visual learners. So that's, I'll let you have a look at it. That's the list. Okay, I will proceed. So cognitive needs. Now we go over the last but not least, cognitive needs. It's so broad as listed here. People on autism spectrum needed, people with intellectual disabilities or other learning disabilities needed. Keep in mind, these two are not the same thing between intellectual and learning disabilities. Intellectual disabilities are associated with below average IQ or lacking a skill for daily living, whereas learning disability is specific to reading, writing, and math. So people who have mental health conditions such as ADHD might need these cognitive needs as well. The list here is not exhaustive, meaning these are not a complete list. It's so broad. There are also age-related challenges that impact cognition, such as Alzheimer's disease. So I would like to mention neurodiversity. It is the key here, regardless of the cognitive conditions people have in your meeting, at your workplace. There are differences in thinking, learning, and problem-solving approaches can give your team fresh new perspectives, different perspective as well. And people described here can contribute at work, at your meetings and your projects, only if you remove barriers to their success. They can contribute. So they might be coping with stress and anxieties. So I'm not generalizing the whole group, but there are some parts of the group will be using some kind of coping strategies here, like fidget toys, or they might just staring away from the screen every now and then. So allow that to happen, make that space to cope with stress and anxiety. And also short breaks. Take short breaks for 1 hour meetings or 1 hour or more, and take a break from staring at the screen, which I just mentioned, because you can only stare at the screen for so long. And have your camera off. With the increasing use of Zoom video calls, I keep seeing a lot of people experiencing tiredness from sitting in front of the camera and staring and feeling overly stimulated, looking at multiple screens I'm showing here. I chose a rather acute example with dogs on these Zoom calls. I love bulldogs, by the way, and also Dubs, UW mascot dog. Dubs too. So keep in mind that people have been staring at the screen constantly for hours. So Zoom fatigue is a thing now. So you keep that in mind and allow them people to have a camera off every now and then. So alternative to online meetings, you can always do phone calls. You can do emails, you can Slack message, and you can do text messaging. You don't always have to have video conferencing call. That's what I mean. And here's a cognitive checklist. Be flexible, allow for coping with anxiety and extra energy with a fidget toy or other types of coping skill, even including breathing exercises. If people need to take a moment to have, just breathe, that's really helpful. And so that people can stay present at your meetings and not worn out. So encourage short breaks, and that's part of it from screen. Allow for people to keep their camera off, and I'll also allow for alternatives option besides doing video conferencing. So I have come to the almost the end of these webinars. Here are the takeaways from today. Ask questions every time. You should not assume. Always check in with people to see their need, any need they may have, any kind of access needs. Your small efforts can go a long way, and this is hard work. When I was doing preparing the materials for this, when I was using check accessibility and checking the color, checking the font, that gets so much of takes so much of my time compared to if I were to design a meeting with less accessibility. So although it takes much of my time, but I can do this and make this online meetings more accessible to all. So here we got to the Q&A session. I can answer now. I think that any questions that you may have that will benefit everyone. There might be some questions that I can answer, and we can follow up with those answers to those questions when we send you the webinar recording. So there will be recording, so you can watch this after we summarize and finalize, and we will post it up on YouTube with closed caption as well. So questions. I am looking for questions here. I am not seeing any questions. Any more questions? You can send me an email after this if you rather do that way. Any questions? Okay, I think I'm seeing one now. I apologize. Doing a little bit of tech difficulties here. So Kelly, would you mind copying and pasting Q&A? Okay, because I cannot click on the Q&A and because I'm in the full screen mode. That's part of the accessibility piece I want to keep in mind. I'm using one screen right now. So a lot of people are using a laptop like this, a 13-inch monitor. So you cannot do a lot of things when you're in a meeting presentation in a full screen. It's switching the windows is hard. I got one question here. How do you manage brand adherence with accessibility? I am not understanding what you mean by that. Can you please elaborate? Do you mean by like, oh, I mean, I'm making an assumption here. Do you mean by colors that you use for your brand? Like, and is it color contrast type of thing, images? I don't know what you're referring to. Kelly, would you mind if they're typing, please copy and paste it into the Zoom webinar chat. I cannot exit out of this. I could, but it may interfere with closed caption. Oh, yes. So certain brand, thank you for whoever clarifying that. Certain brands, specific colors and types. Yes, there are the thing called, there's a website called WebAIM. I think that is a web accessibility website where you can go in there and use their tools to check color contrast. That's exactly what I did for my slide with all different types of colors. The one with the pastel, I wrote pastel and all showing different color. So that's one thing you can do to like ensure accessibility. Another thing is use check accessibility feature in Microsoft 365. So, and also in the Acrobat Reader, which is your PDF readers. You can totally do that. But for the PDF readers, you have to pay a little bit of extra money for that functions to be available to you. So you can do all those type of things. Okay. All right, for the time's sake, I'm going to move on. If you have any more questions, please feel free to send it to my emails. I will be showing that slide in a bit. So today, first, I want to thank you, the audience, for showing up and being present. Now you can make your work more accessible for all, including people with disabilities. Today's webinar is a collective effort. I did not do this alone. I would like to thank Fern, my instructor from my first year at the University of Washington School of Social Work. I want to thank Elaine, my classmate who introduced me to the Arc of King County, a nonprofit that provides services to people of all ages with intellectual developmental disabilities. Elaine also helps me understand disability definitions and the different types of models out there defining disability. Next, I want to thank my Evans School classmate, Brittany, for providing me detailed feedback on my slide. And next, I want to thank Jay for helping me out with assistive technologies and what it is about assistive technologies and all that stuff in details and also general feedback. Jay, thank you so much for that. And also Scott for connecting me to Jay. I also want to thank WTI webinar event team and my supervisors and my mentors for guiding me into the right direction to make this type of content that is so important, making online meetings accessible during this time of COVID-19 and possibly after the COVID-19 as well. I want to thank Comcast for partnering with WTIA for such important contents to make telework / working from home more accessible and inclusive. So here we got the upcoming webinars. I let you look at it. There are Working Virtually Part 2, which is the Part 2 of this, coming up next Wednesday at 10 a.m. So be sure to register for that. I will go into like demo. I will do probably a live demo. I'm not sure given the tech involved, but I will try to at least show you recorded screen demos of how you use those tools and how to turn on those features in the common apps that a lot of people are using, especially people who are working from home right now. And there are these other webinars that are coming up. Data research using the Census Bureau, which is coming up in June. So June 5th, June 10th, and June 23rd. So be sure to register for those. Here's a contact for feedback. Now we have reached the end of the webinar. So like I have mentioned earlier, I am a lifelong learner who is passionate about making spaces accessible and inclusive. I warmly welcome your feedback so that I can improve. I'm also inviting you in creating more contents like this in the future. Join me too, if you also, that's what I mean, if my pronunciation is not that good right there. So if you also care about making the world accessible for all, on May 20th, I will do a little more in-depth about how to use accessibility features, like I have mentioned earlier. And thank you for coming. I appreciate you for coming, giving your time and watching me as I present. And I also excited to hear your feedback. Thank you.